Hello, freedom fighters. Welcome to another Saturday discussion on this week's topic. This week's topic is fundamentally what is a universal religion versus a tribal religion, and is it possible for them to live peacefully together? Can they coexist? And if you've been keeping up with the articles that I put out this week, I think you will know my answer to that. Uh, Yesterday I put out my challenge this argument, which was universal religions inevitably destroy indigenous religious traditions. This is obvious and apparent, and yet I feel like it has to be stated because there's always this moral superiority of amongst universalists, those people who believe that there is one God, whatever that might be. And pretty much universal religions are Abrahamic religions, right? So there's this one God, and everybody must bend the knee to this one God. And we can't live in peace with people who are next door to us if they have multiple gods or other gods. This is fundamentally the problem. Every nation on the planet has the sovereign right to its own customs and ways. And yet, the violation of all the nations of the world, pretty much, by the Abrahamic religions is apparent. Whether you go anytime in the last 2,000 years at least, but longer than that, really, depending on scale, you see that there is an overt takeover of nations, of sovereign nations, through the religious indoctrination, the religious demand that exists amongst the Abrahamics. You see that in North Africa, the Islamists came in the 500, 600, 700, 800 AD and took over from all the indigenous tribal people that lived in North Africa. You see across Europe and into America, over 2,000 years of time, the Christian uh, entity has conquered nation by nation until it has subsumed all of the nations into its domain, into its jurisdiction. And jurisdiction is the right word because these systems are political, which is the argument I made on Tuesday. The political nature of universal religions versus the apolitical nature of tribal or indigenous religion. We have to understand that what a religion is not specifically a spiritual practice. A religion is any kind of practice that you do religiously, right? It is a habitual or a tradition that's built, a pattern that you create in your life. This is a religious activity. This is a religion. So what we're talking about with religion is a pattern of behaviors that have been codified into some sort of container, some sort of codex that then gets shared with other people, and then they take on those patterns of behavior. And that's the limits of religion. All religion, spiritual religion, has at its root the fact that you conduct yourself through faith. You don't conduct yourself through uh, pragmatism or realism or or even historicity or any logical pattern besides the subjective logic that each one creates or inherits from, again, the codex, the pattern of behaviors that are given to us. Now, everybody has a pattern of behaviors that they retrieve from somewhere. We adapt to our world based on the teachings and the behaviors, watching our environment, our parents, our neighbors, our communities, our tribes, our nations, the world at large. We become what we see and what we experience in the world around us, which is why it's very important to put yourself around people that you want to become alike to. But we don't have an inherent quality in us to engender one particular pattern of behaviors or another. There might be disposition through genetics and through genetics that allows us to adapt to things easier or not, depending on what it is, to adapt to different environments or not, and even certain sets of behaviors. But overall, there's not one particular overarching universal pattern of behavior that everybody assumes by nature. There is no Christianity, Islam, or Judaism to an infant. But there is nature to an infant. There is the experience of life. And what is it that tribal religions do far better than any of the universal religions? It is to inculcate the natural form of life into behaviors that are represented by reflecting the environment. All indigenous religions are built upon the the nature of the people in the place in which they live. So tribal religions are built off of geography, the history told to them through their people, the language, and all the other context of life that these people grow up within proves to them that religion, because it is not based on a set of patterns and behaviors that are dictated, but rather that are felt and experienced. You can see this in the animism amongst Native Americans. You can see this amongst the Shintoism of Japan. It's everywhere. And so, what we have to recognize as fact is that these universalist religions expand. It's part of their nature versus tribal religions, which contain. So, a tribal religion is going to contain a body of people because it reflects the nature of those people. It is going to identify, dignify, and reflect the character of a particular nation. A nation is a homogenous group of people, not a melting pot. I'm probably going to repeat this in every single live I do, because it seems this one is really hard to understand for a lot of people. There is no nation where there is multiple categories of people by race, by dependent. Religion is kind of a gray area sometimes, but religion and language, culture, there is no homogenous group. There is no nation. There is many nations. And so we don't have a nation reflecting a foreign religion anywhere in the world besides where a conquering force comes and conquers an indigenous peoples. But if you look at the entire history of the world, how many times has it happened that two indigenous peoples, meaning that they're indigenous to a particular place, and they're cohesive and they are homogenous to themselves, they go to war with each other, one conquers the other, and do they demand that the other becomes their religious beliefs? This is not very common amongst indigenous religions throughout history, because your religion is about your people. So the Greek pantheon is for Greeks. Odinism is for the Norse. There is and Germanics, but there's a particular set of things that go into that can only be codified by the people represented in that story. So now that brings us again to the universal religions. When they come in, when the people who have these universal religions, when they come to a neighboring tribe and they conquer them, they demand conversion. Well, this is sort of uh, a antagonistic and antithetical to the way that all nations retain their sovereignty. And so whether you're conquering or not, to completely erase a class of people, to completely erase races through um, this religious total war, where you're salting the fields, you're burning the crops, you're burning the homes, you're tearing it all out so that you can replace it with your own, uh, is not born on um, proof. It's not born on its own vindicated position. It's born on the same standards of belief that all religions, spiritual religions, have to be born out of. They are not fact based. They are experience amongst the tribal religions, or the exportation of experience with the universalist religions. So what I mean by that is tribal religions, they ingrain the religion into it's from nature, it's from the experience of life. The universal religions export it to another dimension. All responsibility and experience and what you're doing with your life while you're here on earth is given away for some other place, other time. There's no other religions that do this. There's just, you act so that you experience life now, and you create a better world today through your actions, through your religion, for your people. That is a tribal religion. There is notions of afterlife in all of these religions, whether that be some form, really they all have some form of reincarnation, but they don't have, you're going to go to heaven forever or you're going to go to hell forever. And so the battleground that's created by the universalist religion is one that pits people against their natural existence while they're here on this planet today. Not only that, but the politicizing of it, the evangelizing of it, the mandate, especially strong is that mandate exists within the Islamic leg of Abrahamism and universalism. It's extremely potent, and their entire will surrounds the fact that they have to convert people. They have to convert other people into their religion. If you are a kafir, if you are not a Muslim, then you are worthy of slavery or worthy of being lied to. The same stuff that you see in the Talmud. Um, it's the same with Islam. And so this need to evangelize, this need to convert the enemy non-Muslim or enemy, with the Jews, it's not really conversion; it's more just enslavement. But there is the dogma of these religions is to convert the whole world into its one system. And what does that remind you of? If you're thinking communism, you're right. And Christianity doesn't get away either from that. It just does it in a different way. But if you look at the history of Christianity, you see that its behavior was very much the same as the Islamic form of takeover, uh, with Charlemagne coming and capturing the urban centers by the sword. But the term pagan just means somebody who doesn't live in the city, just like the heathen means someone who lives in the heath, right? Outside of the city. The cities were conquered rather quickly in the same fashion that has been the pattern of the Judaic peoples since time immemorial, which is that they corrupt the leadership of a nation. They use that as a pedestal of authority to dictate new terms and to create usurious behavior and domination of the body of a nation, the people of a nation, until it sucks out all the marrow of that nation. And that's why anyway, without getting too far on that, the same nature has existed with the Christians, except it's like hand in hand. The Christian came to Europe. They said, convert or else. All the pagans said, no thanks. The Christians said, okay, it's or else, and that we're taking you by the sword, if nothing else. And over 2,000 years, there's not been a totally successful elimination of paganism from the European peoples and European descendant peoples. Rather, there has been a ember alive in all the people, remembering where we came from, but not really able to practice it because the world that we live in, right? For how long would you last in most of this last 2,000 years as a pagan? You'd be practicing witchcraft or whatever, and you get burned at the stake. And so, for obvious reasons, it hasn't been overtly practiced, but the paganism, the anti-universalism is still alive. It has been alive. And I think it's a large reason why today there's a vast number of people who are uh, exiting universalism as a religious um, system. And so the Christian form of takeover has been, uh, hiding the dagger behind their back, extending a bag of gold with the other. If the gold isn't accepted, then comes the dagger. And this coercive behavior. So, in a way, I actually respect Islam more for the fact that they're just overt about it. They just say, "Yeah, if you're not like us, we're going to come and we're gonna kill you if you don't convert." At least you're telling me what's going on. With Christians, it's this moral superiority that says we're doing this for your own good, and why don't you just kneel already? And so the cloak and dagger method. And then when it comes to Jews who don't even want to convert people into their universalist religion, their universalist religion is about domination alone, but really it's the centerpiece for all the Abrahamic religions. Uh, and this Abrahamic, this Judaic system is one that cannot escape from its own shooting itself in the foot, because everywhere it goes, the deeds that it does are so evil that it gets removed from the population everywhere it goes until modern times, until basically post-Napoleonic wars. We see that the Jew has become more and more ingrained into the society in ways that are um, difficult to extract, and today are fully tied in. Their system is the new system. In fact, the laws of the United States of America were built on Protestantism specifically. And this Protestantism was an effort to revert, just like Martin Luther was trying to revert to uh, the words of Jesus alone, the act of honoring and worshiping that rather than the institution that is Christianity or Catholicism, and the nature of these systems being to basically dominate and control. So Martin Luther and the British common law was an attempt, or attempted. It wasn't an attempt. It attempted to create systems. So even that isn't really correct. The common law doesn't do things. The common law reflects the will of the people, its customs and practices of the day. So the evolution of the common law in England was such that the individual rights and individual freedoms of the people were becoming recognized as something directly related to God, not to the king, not to a institution of the church. Instead, it was directly with God, which is the Protestant way. So this reversion or this extraction that occurred not only those times, but multiple times throughout thousands of years, people attempting to basically do what Protestantism finally was able to do, which was to create a nation based on the fact that you have a direct relationship with God that's superior and grants you rights as in a charter from God, which is the Constitution, that supersedes governments, supersedes the state, and the state is only at the will and behest of the people who have rights that cannot be converted into privileges by the state. The political nature of universalist religion doesn't allow this to last. It only lasted 90 years, this system, and less than that, really, because Talmudic law became standardized in the United States of America, besides the fact that the 14th Amendment also created a dual system of law. But the Protestant system of law was basically a reflection of the Ten Commandments. It said there are it said there's 5 crimes that exist. These 5 crimes create an injured party, a corpus delicti. If you do these 5 crimes, you're held as a criminal. Anything else, you're a free man. And then there's the civil law, which is it's subject to rights. It's subject to the constitutional law, which is an affirmation of rights. So this political system was Protestantism, built on top of ancient pagan, ancient European systems. The laws of the European systems are actually the foundations for which all of the Protestant laws were built on top of, and we call this amalgam the common law. What we experience within the common law is a reflection of this evolution. Although since the last 158 years, that has been subverted into a Roman civil law system and a Talmudic system of law, and so it is not the same thing anymore. But that Talmudic law that entered into the body of the United States of America law system, legal system, was that everything's interpretable. The Talmud says everything is able to be interpreted. And so the rabbis all argue with each other all the time over every single point. And the one whose argument stands in the moment is the one who wins the argument. Rather than there being eternal laws, eternal rights, inviolable, unalienable, instead there is always the shifting sand. There's not rights. There's privileges granted by whoever's in charge in the moment. So universalist religion composes the need to dominate, to have centralized control. It does not live in common respect with other traditions, other religions. It seeks to dominate at every turn. It encodes this into its codices. It builds this directly into its charters, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran. Explicitly. Although there is differences between these 3 legs of Abrahamism, of universalism, really, when we look at the outcomes rather than the moral intent, when we look at the outcomes, we see that what I said is true, that there is no other way that they can operate than through dominion. They are the conqueror. And while I respect the conquerors throughout history, because there is a natural cycle to nations and to systems, and the conqueror represents that which comes at the end of a civilization, to challenge it or to bring about something new. And then there's the natural conflict that exists between peoples. What I can't respect is communism, for the nature of it doesn't allow for the uniqueness of races, of nations, of peoples to survive it. And that is also the conflict that exists with universal religions. They are one and the same. Communism is Judaism, which is the same as technocracy and plutocracy. These words all indicate and they point at a different sort of perspective into the same problem, but they are one and the same. And it's the notion that I will not live in respect to my neighbor. They must become as I demand that they become, not only in their tribute, in their taxes, because if I conquer another nation, I can charge a tax on those people. I can enslave them. I can do whatever to them as a conqueror under the natural law. But they don't end it there. They say you have to adapt to our spiritual way. You have to become as we are. You have to respect our view of what happens in the afterlife. You have to at your innermost core, your innermost belief structure, you have to become what we demand you to be. This is something bigger than enslavement. This is something more egregious than enslavement, as enslavement has been codified throughout time. But I read this in last week's video, this piece that I wrote on slavery, and basically what it came down to was this: that the law of slavery through all human history has been, if you can't maintain your freedom, then you don't deserve it, basically. And the conqueror is one who has maintained his freedom, and he has conquered you. You owe a debt to that conqueror until and but that you do something about it, that you do something about your slavery. So really it's might is right. Who holds your freedom in their hands, you or another, is all that matters in the moment. And it goes along with the maxim that uh, possession is 90% of ownership. Do you possess your freedom? Or does somebody else possess your freedom? That determines the ownership. That determines who owns you. And so slavery has been recognized as a natural law, as a natural eventuality throughout all human history. And to look at the terms of slavery, what does it mean? Is that your will is now somebody else's will. Today, a lot of this anti-government uh, ideas are based on the fact that all we've seen for generations and generations is maleficence in our governments, in our states. But throughout most of human history, well, most of European history, we've had beneficent states. We've had beneficent monarchs. We've had beneficent rulers. And the further back you go, the more beneficence you see, because the tribe gets smaller. The accountability upon that monarch or warlord or whatever becomes much, much higher. And if they don't abide by the will of the people, which are in Europe is the free people, then they are challenged or they are removed from that position in whatever way necessary. So when we look at the nature of universal religions, the same problem exists. The problem that the conqueror arrives, your will is removed from you, and you are a slave. That is the political nature of universal religions, that they dominate through the sword, or through coercion in some fashion. They force populations under their thumb, and then over time they erase that population's identity and inject it with their own communistic, universalistic notions of life. This I have a serious problem with. And I was on a chat. Let's see if I can pull it up. I was on a chat with some people, particularly one person who is a Catholic, I think, and they didn't read my articles or get involved in any way really with actually understanding what my position was, but they decided that they were going to comment anyway. What they commented is basically an argument for the idea that Christianity is for white people. And this argument is everywhere. And I don't care to rehash so much of the argument that is happening amongst white nationalist people. But the the fact is that you have to look at the nature, the behavior, the thing is what it is that you are exercising, whatever you call it. And you have to understand whether you have to look at yourself and be introspective and recognize where you begin and where your indoctrination ends. What has been dumped into our minds versus what has been organically experienced in life, each individual person. And you really have to take a look at this. I think that it would be very hard to maintain a universalist perspective with the right amount of solitary introspection and meditation. I don't think that they exist together. But this person gave me a quote from Sir Thomas Aquinas on his commentary on the Politics, Book 3, Chapter 2, where it says, "The state ought rather to consist of a single race, for a single race is united in its customs and habits, which make for friendship between the citizens by reason of their likeness to one another. Hence states were made up of diverse races, hence states which made up diverse races have been destroyed owing to the dissensions which they had with one another through the diversity of their customs, for one part of the state joined forces with foreign enemies owing to its hatred of the other part." And so this guy sent me this quote as an argument to the political nature of universal religions and the argument that I've posed in this live so far. And it's ridiculous because people attempt to prove you wrong by proving you right, and that is what this gentleman has done. Sir Thomas Aquinas is saying that the differences between the different tribes, which are races, are the reason for which they should be separate and not universal. And so when you bring a universal religion in, you erase that uniqueness and that individuality, and you erase the um, you erase the nature of the people. And so the answer isn't to create universalism, and the answer isn't to allow for dissension to exist just because you have differences of opinion. The dissension will exist, but the act of conquering another entity with universalism doesn't have to be the answer. This is the difference between the heathen pagan religions and the nations of Europe pre-Christianization and the nations of North Africa pre-Islamization and that of the Middle East. The answer isn't to blanket everybody in this one religion because they're fighting each other. They're not erasing each other's culture. Europeans, everybody fought each other. That the conflict and war is part of human nature, but they didn't erase each other's religion. They evolved organically, these religions, through the people and through the interbreeding of different peoples over time, but they didn't explicitly come in and erase the culture of a people with the intent to erase a culture of a people. There's a difference between the intent to eliminate a people to bring them into your fold to control them and to have a legitimate cause for a war and go and fight it. And you might eliminate your enemy from the earth, but your intent is different and you're not enslaving them to this will, and you're not altering the construction of these people. Their legacy will still live on as a unique people with a unique identity and a unique culture. I hope I'm making myself clear here. I'm trying to um, elucidate this correctly. And then this person goes on to say, if you're a pagan, you're a good goyim. All pagans are tools for the Jews to just come into white groups and try to debunk Christianity. They do not have a set of practices or communities that meld people together in any structure. Jews' victory depends on chipping away at Christian unity. You will simply not find a pagan that, one, has any orthodox concept of what they should and should not believe in, and two, be neutral or indifferent about their views of Christianity. Anyone promoting Christianity as Jewish is either simply illiterate, purposely lying, or both. There's so much that could be said to this, but where to even start with those kinds of comments? Christianity is born of a Jew. Um, even if he is Galilean, Essenian, he is a Jew. I don't know why people contest these things. The orthodoxy of paganism, well, it's not universalism. That's the only difference. There is an orthodoxy to paganism. It's just that Christianity came and killed it, and Islam came and killed it. So you're worshiping your conqueror, basically. Which is, if you want to do that individually, it's fine. But to demand other people do that, that's where the problem lies. And to say that to be a pagan is a good goyim because the Jewish religion is an ethno religion, that whole thing, no, very different. The fact that one ethno religion is very different from another proves the point in itself. You're not tying the fact is that they are all unique. That is the defining quality of it. Versus the fact that universalism blankets everybody in one belief structure, one practice, and demands that they do this one practice, this one behavior. That is the difference between being a pagan, which really the word shouldn't be used this way. We should be accurate with our words, and just because somebody's pagan doesn't mean that their belief structure is one particular thing or another. It just means it's non-universalism. It's non-Abrahamism. And I always have to say this because there is a conflict. The religious debate of how we create unity amongst the nation. I have no problem working with people who are Christian. The only boundary that exists is, are we going toward the same goals? Are we attempting to get to the same place? And is our behavior manifest in such a way that we are working in the same way to get to that place? If not, then we're not working together. We don't even have to say it out loud. We're not working together. If we're going toward the same goal, then we're working together. I don't care what your personal practices in your home is. Just like I don't care what happens in your bathroom or bedroom, as long as you keep it private and away. The moment that you notify the world of what it is that you're doing, it's different. You put it into the public domain. Now you've made it a challengeable entity. But if it's private and you keep it private, then it doesn't matter to me. You keep it to yourself. And when I say private, I don't mean that you can't announce to the world that you're a Christian or a pagan or whatever, but the material of the argument is that you keep it to yourself. Universalism is Christianity and Islam and Judaism. That's what it is. It's Abrahamism. Protestantism was the attempt to break away from the institution and to worship the one quality that makes someone have that direct connection to God, which is to worship God and disuse of all of the other components of the institution. Now, it comes with behaviors, it comes with practices, it comes with things to be a Protestant as well. But there's a difference between bringing the sword and conquering your neighbor and then forcing them to take on your religion, and the Protestant way, which mirrors the words of Jesus, which Jesus told his disciples, spread across to all the places of the earth. And as you go, when you enter a town, if they welcome you into their homes, then go in and tell them everything that I've told you and teach them. And when you've told them everything that you have to teach them, go to the next place. But if you walk into a town and they curse you and they stone you and they say, get out of here or whatever, then leave and brush the sand off the bottom of your sandals, take no part of that town with you, and go to the next place. I don't mind this behavior. That is Protestantism. You're having a conversation with somebody, you say, I'm a Christian. Okay, good for you. Depending on whether that person cares or not, depends on whether or not you continue on your way or you work with them or you, whatever it is that you have to do. But Jesus never said, bring the sword and conquer the non-believers. That is institutionalized. That is political endeavors. Islam, on the other hand, explicitly said, go and kill the kafir, kill the non-Muslim. And it said to subsume them into your system. So I will never work with Islam and Muslims for that and more reasons. But and Judaism is by far the worst of the three, because it says don't announce it. Steal, rob, cheat, kill, murder. Everything is okay so long as they're non-Jews, and do it privately. Do it without them noticing. Use every means to gain the upper hand. This sort of behavior I have no respect for whatsoever. At least Islam does it overtly. And for that, I say, okay, I have a little bit of respect for an enemy. And for the Christian who uses this moral superiority, which isn't earned, but rather seems to be on grant or permit from the institution itself, saying that now you're a card-carrying member, you have the right to be superior. You have morality now. Well, no, morality is built upon your behavior, or it's represented by your behavior. And your virtue is is construed by others by your behavior, but it's built by your will to be a decent human being. And so, yeah, I can work with anybody who's a Christian, so long as they're not doing this institutionalized, universalistic, evangelizing, conquering, subsuming thing. And I think that's where we have to stand to be able to work together. We have to understand the terms of the agreement, that what we are fighting for is much more than the behaviors that you allow for yourself, which is your religion. Your behavior here on earth today, whatever that might be, is not as important as the continuance and the survival of your people. You are one cell amongst a body of billions of cells. And particularly, you make up. So here's a quick diversion. But what is race? Today, people are saying race means you're white, you're black, whatever. But in actuality, a race is a nation. It's a people who are homogenous by various particular and certain qualities. That is, they speak the same language. They have the same genetics, generally speaking, within a small uh, uh, area, within a tight area. Genetically similar. They are culturally similar. They are religiously similar. They are um, their worldview and their geography match. That they see the world as in the geography that they live on. They are the caretakers of that land, and the land cares for them. And their stories, their religion, everything comes from that as well. This is the nature of a race. So really, fundamentally, when we say race, we're identifying a boundary around a group of people based on their genetics, their language, their culture, So now that we have this boundary, we can re-identify it based on the circumstances of the day. Today, people of fair skin, the white people on this planet, are in an extreme situation. In 300 years, but also in about 100 years, the last 100 years and the last 300 years, the numbers kind of reflect the same thing, which is that we went from being 30% of the population, give or take, to now being 7% of the population, 3% of that being children for the future. Uh, our homogeneity has to be represented as the white race at this point by demand, by necessity, because we have to protect the continuance of this container as a whole. And we are seeing it assaulted. But when we did make up 30% of the population, the English and the Italians weren't good bedfellows. There was infighting between these groups because we didn't have to fight for our survival. And if you look at every other group on the planet, it's the same, from tribal to so from the tribal racial position uh, to the ethnic amalgam of peoples of a certain type, the Asians, the Africans, the Europeans, the Americans, whatever. You look at the indigenous Americans, and they were in major conflicts across the continent far before and with far greater animosity than existed with the colonial Europeans. Deep hatreds that go back thousands of years Um, so every group has had conflict at the tribal level, but we adapt our definitions and we adapt to our circumstances so that we can do what needs to be done. And that's where we're at today. The survival of the white race um, is being challenged. And that is why we have to focus on what it is that we have in common rather than what is different between us. And so I reserve the right to challenge all the Christians on every level uh, when we've rescued our people. But until that day comes, I think it's more important to recognize the differences, recognize these boundaries, accept the terms that we can accept so that we can unify for our common cause. And what that means is Christians accepting that people don't want to become Christian should be left the fuck alone, and um, and all of those who are not Christian uh, accepting the fact that the Christians have had a long history now and a long tradition built up within this religious uh, system, and that as long as the behaviors between these two parties can work together in common cause to rescue the quickly diminishing blood that binds us all, despite what we do on earth in our time here, the fact that we exist and we have this blood determines it inherently. We don't have to argue over that. The fact is, you exist. It is a deeper root than the behaviors that we exercise in our lives. It's just that you are that. Definitive, without question, without debate, you are that thing. You are of that blood. You are of that line. You are of that place. And so you might as well work together. Otherwise, the divide and conquer agenda is going to tear apart that movement and that effort. Of course, this isn't just the one uh, area of contention, but this is a major area of contention, and it is not the singular issue. But in coming weeks, I'll be discussing the political movement that we are building behind the scenes right now that is attempting or will attempt to exercise every means at law, the ultimate remedies at law to correct the state's incoherence with the Constitution. So, what I mean by that is we have a state, it doesn't represent the will of the people. And what we are going to be bringing into the world soon is a political effort to alter that system. And the only way to do this, and it's historically accurate that we do it in this fashion, is to exercise the law first and to prepare for what comes after. Today, nobody's prepared. Nobody exercises the law. And everybody's somehow waiting for a savior to come. I wonder where they get that idea. Who is waiting for a savior? Quick tangent. Who's waiting for their savior to come? If you don't know, it's the Jews waiting for their Messiah. And it seems that everybody else is waiting for the same thing. Waiting around doesn't get us anywhere. And honestly, doing these videos, sharing memes, I do this quite a lot. I write articles, I share memes, I do videos, and it's all shouting into the void, to be honest. It's like a limited hangout, but everybody's just circling around each other. This information needs to get out further. It needs to reach the people that really need to hear it, not the people that already know it. But we need the people who already know it to take action while we have the energy, while we have the ability and the liberty and freedom of movement. And we have to stop waiting around for a savior. There is no savior except maybe you being your own savior, but there is no savior. And for the American constitutionalists, the savior was the founding fathers, right? They idolize and pedestalize these people. For the National Socialists, it's Adolf Hitler, right? Pedestalize that man. They're not saviors. They're people that were in the right place at the right time of the right condition. They had the right intelligence, motive, everything to do what needed to happen in that moment. We need to gather all the people that need to be gathered today in a serious effort to change what's happening today. It's interesting that 250 years is a sort of a cyclical boundary that you can see throughout history as being the end of an age of empire. And we hit 250 years of the United States of America kind of this year, or well, yes, this year coming up. And so we're at that 250 years, even though we've had a dual system of law for 158 of those, and it hasn't really been the American Republic anymore, the constitutional republics of the sovereign nations. But the time has come. And everybody's just sitting on their asses and everybody's complaining and everybody's infighting with each other. And the responses that I've gotten, mostly one-on-one, people DMing me and commenting like that. They're not commenting publicly, but they'll DM me, and they say something about the religion, or the religious article and how divisive it is or whatever. But really what this article is meant to do is to elucidate how to move forward, to elucidate the truth enough that we can see clearly the lines, the boundaries, and then be able to unite despite those boundaries, work together toward what we have in common. And to understand the historicity of the behaviors that we are entertaining and the things that we are doing with our lives. So anyway, we are bringing something into the world soon that is going to attempt to exercise every means at law to correct the remedy. And this is the historically accurate thing to do. You have to appeal to your state, however that is in the time. Today we have a de facto operative law exercising communist state as our government. That is what it is. We still need to appeal to that entity for remedy. What that means is we appeal to it in law, saying, based on the law, this is what you're supposed to be doing. It's in a form that is a demand that must be heard. If they do not recognize the law anymore, then they are lawless. And the people are not represented anymore, and a nation empowers a state. When a state does not reflect the will of the nation anymore, it is no longer a state of that nation. It is a foreign nation to that, or it is a foreign state to that nation. It is a foreign state to the people because it represents other wills. And that's what we have today, no matter how you look at it. So what we are doing is the same thing that what we are going to be doing soon is the same thing that the American colonists were doing with the it wasn't even really with the King George, it was with the Parliament of England. And so we're doing the same thing. We are going to give notice and demand for remedy. If it is not heard, then along the way, while we're doing this last exercise of the law, we prepare for what comes afterward. And that's what everybody really has to be doing, organizing and preparing for what comes afterward, because there's only so much that can exist as remedy in law. And if you come onto other calls, I'll explain this much further than I am here, but I highly encourage people to get in on these calls and to join in on the chats where we talk about the law, or look on Liberty Uncensored Substack to get the links to follow to the conversation, to the places where we have these conversations, like on Telegram and now on Discord. So the final point here is this: we must unify to achieve our common ends. If we have no unity, we will suffer endless slavery for ourselves and for our children, and the indignity of the destruction of our race and our people. And no matter where you start from in this conversation, this line of thinking, there is no more time. There is no more time. We're either going to take the proper actions that need to be taken, or we're going to accept our defeat. And that is up to every single person out there to accept and to do something about. We are at the end. So anyway, stay tuned for all of the next things that are coming, because they are going to be worthwhile. And so, in fact, for anybody who's interested, who's going to see this in time, or is watching right now, I'm going to go and do a call on Telegram in the du jour nationality correction chat at 2:30 Mountain Standard Time, so 1 hour. And I will try to get this video posted and a link put out so that people can join in that. But you can go to any of the articles on expatriation or law or de jure status correction. You can type in those keywords. You can look for it in the Substack on Liberty Uncensored, and you can find a link for that Telegram, and you can come join that at 2:30 Mountain Standard Time. And it's going to be an interesting one today. Hopefully we get enough people to come on to make it worthwhile. And pretty soon I might be migrating my conversations on de jure law here to Substack as well. But for right now, I've been doing the lives there on Telegram. And then also, for anybody who's interested, I'm going to be going on a podcast on Sunday at 8 p.m., which I'll also post a link in this video when it comes out, with Flood, who's also here on Substack. And Sunday afternoon, I'll also be having a live with a interesting brother, Thomas Freedom Jefferson, who wrote a massive book on the basically how to correct our financial system. He, like myself, is a student of Gottfried Feder, and the methodologies that we can in place to correct for the system of usury, central banking, private central banking, and all the other things that are happening. And I'm sure there's places where we're going to disagree, and it'll be interesting. But for the most part, I think what we're going to be finding from that conversation is that there's actually quite a lot of solutions that exist today that we can exercise even before we take hold of the treasury again as a nation. There's a lot of things that we could do today. And then also to finalize this call, I am also now accepting members into the HK Trust Authority, which is a new enterprise that I've just set up, where I educate people on how to build private trusts, and I educate people not only how to do it, but depending on the levels and whatnot, I construct it for you. I will teach you the history of trusts, what they mean in the law, both historically and today, how to build them properly, what every single component means. You get one-on-one time um, every month or yearly, depending on how you pay for that service. And so basically, I'm teaching how to protect your assets, how to organize your assets into something that can be set for perpetuity for your children and all of that. And I do it for a fraction of the normal costs that go into this. With if you were to go to a law firm or trust specialist firms, you would end up paying quite a lot of money for the same things. You can come and you could pay me $125 an hour basically, and um, you get everything that you need to know how to do it yourself, how to build it and construct it, how to maintain it as a trustee, or how to be a beneficiary, or how to be a grantor. Um, and you'll know exactly where the trust fits into law in many various places and ways. And you can ask direct questions and you can get direct answers. And there is no informational gatekeeping. And I will help you to understand and to develop these things, uh, particularly and uniquely to your situation. And this also ties into how to uh, correct political status in law, which is where what we get into in the law conversations with expatriation and all of that. And we explain diligently and in incredible detail exactly how these things function, why they function the way they do, why they are the proper remedy in law. We prove it. We do not build on assumption. So if you come and you join this, you're going to be getting a lot of value out of it, and you're going to be supporting me personally, also Liberty Uncensored, and also a lot of the other efforts that are happening behind the scenes with what we're doing. And so I highly encourage you that if you want to protect your assets or learn about the law, come into these groups. We are educating people on the law for free. Um, the trust does have a cost to it. Um, but I encourage you to come and check that out. And I'll be making more public posts, and you'll be able to see some of the content like shorts and things that come from the trust videos that I make for the members. Um, and so stay tuned. Tomorrow, with Thomas Freedom Jefferson at noon, and then 8 p.m. I go on with Flood, and then I think next Wednesday there's another thing I can't remember. But definitely come on in an hour if you're interested in learning about the law. And yeah, I'm going to end it there. Thank you all for joining in this live. It's every Saturday at noon. Today I was 15 minutes late, but every Saturday at noon. And then a lot of other stuff being built around that as well. So just stay tuned, stick with it. Subscribe to Liberty Uncensored, and check out the new publication that I just made, um, which is getting a lot of support already. I'm really happy about that. Um, so I messaged a bunch of people and asked for support because I'm not transferring the Liberty Uncensored uh, emails over to this new publication. But I will put the link in this video as well for that. The new publication is called 1488 Things. For those who know, 1488 is, well, it's okay. You either know or you don't. But we got 25 subscribers in 3 days. So thank you for that, for people who are supporting that. The idea is spreading cinema from the NSDAP era, because this is extremely rare today content, and it is something that can give insight into the nature of the people. Because right now, what we have in the world is this predominance and what we've had since World War II is the predominance of this idea that the Germans are evil. Like somehow they're just collectively evil people that went and massacred a bunch of Jews and made a war with the world, and all of it is false. There's no fucking Holocaust, and except against the Germans by the Judaic coercive control of nations. But by looking at the cinema of the day and looking at footage from the day, it's not just cinema, but predominantly it's going to be cinema. When you look at that, you can see more into the character of the people. Everything is propaganda, people. Like, propaganda actually isn't so much of a bad word as people make it out to be often, especially in the more egalitarian ideological groups. Propaganda is just it's the same thing everybody's doing to each other all the time, trying to convince each other of one thing or another. We are propagandizing each other all the time. And so if you ever have a debate with someone, you know that you use lowest common denominator conversation pieces. You debate, your argument is accessing the lowest common denominator so that you can build off of that. That is propaganda. And a lot of the cinema, and I've seen a lot of it now, is really, it's not even really propaganda in the way that we imagine it. It's just it's more wholesome, and it's, there's like a swastika in there every once in a while, but it's really wholesome. And no matter where you're coming from, go check it out. And there's going to be a lot of cinema coming, at least 2 every week, 2 different entries every week. So stay tuned to that. 1488 things until they censor me, right? And for those who don't know, I'm extraordinarily censored everywhere. Substack, somehow I'm still here, but everywhere else extremely censored, shadow banned, or just shut down or whatever across the board. So if you are seeing anything from Liberty Uncensored, I really or 1488 things or Corey King or wherever, please share it and do the liking and do all that shit. And I really hate having to say that. I feel like an asshole saying that. Please like and share and comment and do all the things. But really, it's necessary, especially for the content that needs to get out there because they don't want it out there. We have to share the right things with each other. I spend enormous sums of time going through and sharing and liking and reposting people's content. And that is for the sake of ensuring that the right thing gets out there so that more people see it. And again, a lot of times it's a limited hangout. You're sharing amongst a select group of people, just cycling it around and around and around. But the more we do it, the more we can collectively break out of the censors algorithms that keep us beaten down. So please support, share it, especially to other places like if you see an article on Liberty Uncensored on Substack, share it to X, because we can't get anything on X. And share it to Facebook or share it to wherever else. Try on YouTube again until they shut me down again. So we're on YouTube again. You can look up Liberty Uncensored on there too. And okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you all very much for coming and watching this, and see ya the next time, which will be, if you join us, in an hour. So I'm going to post this right away, and you guys can catch the link over to the du jour Nationality Correction Law channel on Telegram. And there'll be a bunch of other links. You can follow all the things that I said. All right. Take it easy, folks.